Okay, when you solve rational equations, there are two strategies. So I put them here, 1 and 2. The first strategy is called cross multiplication. It can only be used if you have one fraction equal to one fraction. Okay, only when you have one fraction on each side can you use this method. And how do you cross multiply? So one diagonal, so for instance this one would be the diagonal A times D, will equal the other diagonal, okay? So you've done that somewhere in math just as a strategy with proportions and stuff like that. Okay, so on this specific example, do you see what I did here? 4 times, and you have to put the 4 through everything. So 4x plus 12 equals, and then this cross would be 2x plus 2. Okay, and then it's algebra. Okay, method 2, get it over the same denominator and then drop. So for instance, if I had some kind of mumble jumble like this, you won't see something like this, but can anybody answer me the solution to x? What would x have to equal? This bottom is the same as this bottom, so how do you make the two sides equal? This top should now have to equal that top. Okay, does that make sense if I say that? If the bottoms are the same already, how do you make the whole thing the same? You got to make the tops the same, right? Okay, so here we go. Number 1, tell me, strategy. Should I cross multiply or do common denominators? I would have picked cross multiply on this one. The reason is because I have one fraction and I have one fraction. So I can just multiply them across. Okay, so here we go. On the yellow, I got to do the 10 times the 4, so 40. And I would still have to multiply it by x plus 1 yet, but I'll do that later. So the new coefficient is 40. And then this one, I'm going to have to do the 15 times an x plus 4. Okay, does that make sense the way it's going? See the matchup? Okay, distribute. These are all algebraic steps. Let's distribute. Collect. What do you want to attack first to start moving stuff? Algebra. What do you do first? I would do a minus 15x. Minus 15x. So then it makes 25x. Plus 40 equals 60. Now, what's your next algebraic attack? Subtract 40. Was that your pick? Divide. Okay, done. You don't need to make it any different than that. That's fine. If you had made it a decimal, if you had made it a reduced fraction, that's also good. But I'm just happy you just leave it like that. Okay. Now, when we solve equations, there's one more thing we're going to have to think about. And I'm going to have to think about my restrictions to make sure it's okay. What is x not allowed to be? So what am I looking at when I talk about a restricted value? What's a bad thing to do in a fraction? This is a big idea. We should all know it by now. What's the bad thing? Zero what? Denominator. Dividing by 0 on a fraction is bad. So what value would I never want to put in this x spot? Did you pick -4? If x ended up being -4, that would be a bad situation. What about on this one? I wouldn't want x to be -1. So would our answer be okay then? Is it allowed? Yeah. Okay, but sometimes you have to check if you get an answer and it's also a non-permitted value, you would have to say, no, I can't use this. Okay, number 2, cross multiply or common denominator drop. Which method? Cross multiply? Can you do cross multiply? No, because you don't have one fraction and one fraction. So I'm going to need common denominator on both sides. I have to make the bottoms all the same. Okay, before I do that, can you give me this factored? Can you factor this? Okay, what do I want to put in my bottom? Would we agree that I would need to put an x minus 2 in there? And I would need an x minus 4 in there. If I use that as the bottom, would it work for all 3 fractions? So does this fit in there? Does this fit in there? Does this bottom fit in there? Yep. Okay, so we're going to set those bottoms the same on both sides. Okay, very similar to what we did before. First fraction, look at the bottom, look at the new bottom. Did you do anything to it? First fraction, what happened to it? It's different. So from here to here, it got multiplied by x minus 4, right? You see it. So there to there got multiplied by x minus 4. So I'm going to do that to the top. Okay, moving on. Look at the second fraction. Look at the bottom, look at the new bottom. What happened to it? Got multiplied by a x minus 2. So that's what I'm going to do to the top. Okay, flipping to the other side, so the third fraction here. Look at the bottom, look at the new bottom. What happened? Nothing. So nothing's going to happen to 2. Okay, at this point, since the bottoms are equal, here's the math. If the bottoms are equal, to make everything equal, the tops have to be equal. So I can just write an equation with just the top now. Okay, I'm going to put that together. Okay, to pass grade 11, you have to know what to do right now. Algebra branch, I made you a nice pink paper to remember everything. What do I do? This is your big shiny moment to see if you're ready for grade 12 pre-calc. For candy, if anybody can tell me what the big idea is on this equation. There it is. Did you hear it? Gotta be confident. Equals 0. Okay, so on the algebra branch, I have two sides, and I say if you have one variable, you isolate. This has two variables, so what's your first thing? Equals 0. So I will minus 2. So x squared minus 3x minus 4. Okay, once it's equal to 0, now you go into can I factor mode. So I can try to do a simple trinomial out of this. 4 times 1, adding to a negative 3. Okay, would we have gotten there? Would you have remembered? I got to make equations 0 before I factor. Okay, we better go check out this out up here. What is x not allowed to be? What would be a bad value to use? If x was 2 or if x was 4, those would be not allowed because then it creates a problem. Uh-oh, what did we answer here? We said x could be 4. It can't be though. Okay, number 3, you got to pick, are we going to cross multiply or common denominator? Common denominator, so we're going to go like that. We're going to make this side bottom and this side bottom and pick the same for everything. Okay, before I do my denominator work, just like when we do our adding, is there anything I can factor? GCF, I heard a whisper. GCF, X out. X bracket. So if I take X out, I get an X and a minus 2. So now I'm trying to pick a denominator that will work to fit everything into. So that denominator would be able to fit the first, the second, and the third all in. Okay, here we go. Looking at the first fraction and then the new. What happened to it? X. So 5x. Okay, now I'm moving on to the second fraction. So I look at the bottom and then the new bottom. It changed by a x minus 2. Don't forget I'm actually on this side of the equal sign now, right? So 4x minus 8. Make sure you stick with your side of the equal, right? The last fraction, the bottom, the same. So 10. Okay, now I'm dropping the bottom because I'm making that math conclusion. The bottoms are the same already. Boom, the tops just have to be the same. Are you okay? I put 2 here because I just put the -8 plus 10 together right in that spot. Okay, so now I'm going to algebra, isolation stuff. So I better go back up to the top and think about what numbers I'm not allowed to be. 2 or 0, right? If I can't be 0, because 4 divided by 0 would be bad. Uh-oh, my answer is actually not allowed. So now what should I actually write as a conclusion? No solution. Okay. Okay, I'm going to pick some in your book to do together. Okay, page 9. I can't do cross multiplication on this number 6 because there's no one fraction. We got multiple fractions happening. Okay, so I need to do a common denominator. On this side, I'm actually not even going to write a denominator because it doesn't matter what I do to this side. It's 0 times whatever. What are you going to have? It's just, that side's always going to be 0. Okay, so we're going to have to pick a denominator that will fit everything in it. Before I do that, I need to factor what I can. So there's something to factor. Negative out, I heard. This is a negative out style. Why? Is because the boss, which is the 4x squared, is negative. So -1, 4x squared is now positive, -1. What? I need more room. I didn't give myself anything. And now what? Difference of squares. So -1 and then, bless you. By the way, there's sometimes hints other places when you factor. Okay, so what do I need to have in my bottom? I need the -1. I need a 2x minus 1 and a 2x plus 1. Okay. From this bottom to the new bottom, what happened? Nothing. 8. From this bottom to this bottom, what happened? There happened to be a -1 and a 2x minus 1. Okay. Would you be okay if I did this? What's the subtracting and the negative going to do? Just add. So there was a subtract sign, but then I had a -1 multiplier, so it would just add, and then I'd have to FOIL that. So can you give me the FOIL on it? Okay, and this is where the unit starts to get hard, is that there's a lot of background math. Like you got your foiling in here, you got your factoring, you got isolation. You're going to have all those background math strategies, positives and negatives being in the right spot. Okay, I'm ready to go to my last fraction. So I look at the bottom. I'm going to have to do a -1 and a 2x plus 1. So this would be a minus Okay, so that's why a minus, because it was adding, but then I negated everything. So this is 4x squared plus 2x plus 2x plus 1. Okay, this negative sign has to apply to that whole multiplication though. Do you see how much little details of math you're going to have to think about? Okay, let's go x squareds grouped together first. What happens there? Gone, right? Let's do x's grouping together. How many x's do you find there? -8x. And 8 plus 1 minus 1 is the number. So 8. I'm going to add 8x. This is algebra, isolation algebra. Is my answer, which is 1, is that allowed? Is it a good answer? Yep. What is not allowed? Do you know what this would be? What's not allowed? It's a fraction. 1/2 or -1/2. Those are the things that are not allowed for x. Okay, flip. Let's go to question 15. That one looks hard. Okay, cross multiply or common denominator drop? Common denominator. So what do you all need to put in your bottom to make sure everything fits into it? An A, an X, and a B, right? Do you see it? You would need an A, you would need an X, and a B. Okay, now go through one at a time. The first fraction had an A, so what happened to it? An X and a B happened to it. Flipping the equal sign here, on the other side, X. What happened to the X on the bottom? An A and a B happened to it. The last fraction had a B, so that means an A and an X happened to it. Okay, so you've probably never seen this algebra strategy before. I'm trying to get x what it equals, okay? So here's what I want you to do. Can you move everything that contains x on the same side and everything that would not have an x on it on the other side of the equal sign? So you have to group xy stuff together. So group anything that contains an x is on one side of the equal, and everything that doesn't have an x would go to the other side. What's your math strategy you know how to do to this side? You know how to do something to this that we've learned. GCF. GCF, you can GCF an x out, right? X bracket. And one more step. How do you get x alone? Wasn't that fun math? A lot of just different ways to think about math strategies that you know. Okay, I'm going to do one more together and then you're on your own. So let's pick 13 because it's different. What is your strategy? Cross multiply, good. Right away. Cross multiply. Okay, so I need you to get me some foiling from both sides. I'm going to let you work. I'm going to work. Let's see if we can all foil precisely. We can do it. Okay, if you had flipped your binomials around, you might have things in a different order than me, and that's fine, as long as we have the same stuff somewhere. Okay, so let's do some x work here. I'm going to put my x's together. Put my x's together. Can you put your x's together as well on the other side? Okay, how many variable types do you see? One or two variable types? Okay, I see two right now, but not really. I see two physically, but actually not. Why not? What would happen to these squareds? What if I say I'm going to minus 6x squared on both sides? Can I do that in math? Can I do the same thing on each side of the teeter-totter? They can just go away. So now, how many variables do I see? Just one. So this is an isolation now. So I'm just going to rewrite this a little bit cleaner so you can see. Which algebra do you want to attack to move into the isolation phase? I would do a minus 5x. Keep isolating. What are you going to attack now? Okay, and looking above on my restriction values, it is good.